Perhaps my favorite part about training camp is the ability to see players that are going to have success for the upcoming year before anyone else. And today for San Francisco, that player looked like Ronnie Bell. So in this video, I wanted to break down the second-year wide receiver's performance among other players that really stood out to me. Starting out with the wide receivers and Ronnie Bell himself, throughout this entire camp, he looks like one of the more productive wide receivers San Francisco has. And that's impressive considering how much they've invested in this position. And with Deebo Samuel finally taking a veteran day after going this entire camp period up to this point, Ronnie Bell received more opportunities, and he made the most out of them. He had 3 catches on the day, as well as taking an end around. Coming out of Michigan, I wasn't exactly sure how San Francisco planned to use Bell. He's not exactly a speedster, running his 40-yard dash in 4.52 seconds, and he's not the biggest. But where Bell separates himself from other young rookies is his ability to make some crazy acrobatic catches, and then once he brings down those catches, he's looking to make the most out of it. On his first catch of the day, for instance, Ronnie Bell was running a dig pattern on Rock Ya-Sin and was able to absolutely burn him. But Joshua Dobbs was a little bit off with the ball, leading Bell to have to make this crazy acrobatic jumping catch. In a similar way, facing Renardo Green, Ronnie Bell was able to beat him on a curl route with Brandon Allen throwing him the ball. But once again it was off and Bell had to high point it. Later on in the play action pass, Brock Purdy had Leonard Floyd all over him, but Bell was able to find the soft spot on the defense and pick up 10. Perhaps my favorite play from Bell today though was his 10-yard end around. While it's a pretty simple play and he didn't pick up that much yardage, what he did do was show off his versatility he offers San Francisco. Like Deebo, I think there's a lot you can do with Bell and he can be successful at it, whether that be lining up in the backfield or taking those end arounds as I mentioned, which in my opinion makes him the perfect Deebo Samuel backup. It's hard to find a player that can actually do everything Deebo Samuel can, but Ronnie Bell is a nice light version. And if Bell can show he's one of San Francisco's more consistent return men, he should have no problem grabbing one of those 53-man roster spots. Another young receiver who stood out today was San Francisco's first-round selection, Ricky Pearsall out of Florida. The first thing that stood out to me on his film was his route running. He has the ability to absolutely cook someone in a similar way to Brandon Aiyuk. And with Aiyuk out, I was wondering how his chemistry would be with Purdy. Well, it turns out it's pretty good. Today, for instance, Pearsall was able to catch a couple of passes from Purdy, including one on a comeback route on Lenoir. On this route, Purdy threw it as soon as Pearsall was coming out of his break. Regardless though, Lenoir seemed to have pretty great coverage throughout this route, and maybe even got a hand on the ball, but Pearsall somehow still brought it down. In a similar way with Taylor Hawkins in tight coverage and Brandon Allen in quarterback, Pearsall made another contested catch today. And like Bell, Pearsall is seeing his opportunities at that return man spot. And I really like him there because of his 4.4 speed, and I think if he gets the ball in his hand in a little bit of space, he's going to make the absolute most out of it. This would also be a good opportunity to get Pearsall reps in the game situation, especially if San Francisco is able to figure out Brandon Aiyuk's contract situation. Because while Pearsall is impressed during this training camp, Jauan Jennings is still going to get his reps. He's arguably San Francisco's best wide receiver on the field today. Today, Jennings was able to bring down 4 passes, and what continually stands out on his routes is his ability to separate despite him not being the fastest wide receiver. He does a great job of setting up defenders, and despite running his 40-yard dash in 4.72 seconds, he's able to absolutely explode out of his breaks and create crazy separation. And then with some balls in the air, he's aggressive with it like he is with his blocking. I also wouldn't mind seeing Jauan Jennings involved in some more trick plays because he was a high school quarterback and a pretty good one at that. Moving off San Francisco's wide receivers and into their tight ends, perhaps the biggest news in this group during this offseason was George Kittle's injury that resulted in him losing 30 pounds. And while he was able to put that weight back on, often a player looks a little bit sluggish or off after an injury. But so far, that hasn't been the case with Kittle. Today, for instance, Kittle was able to bring in all 3 passes from Purdy when targeted. He continues to look like one of the most explosive tight ends in the entire league. And while he's great at blocking, I would like to see Eric Sauber and Braden Willis take on that role more so, and Kittle be freed up to catch some passes. Moving off San Francisco's tight ends now and into their running backs, Elijah Mitchell missed practice and Christian McCaffrey only participated in individual drills, meaning Jordan Mason received the bulk carries with the #1 offense, further cementing himself as San Francisco's #2 back headed into the season. Despite being a bigger back who can put his nose in the defense and pick up 3 or 4 every single time, Mason throughout this offseason has really impressed me with his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. and I think that makes him a perfect backup for Christian McCaffrey, especially because he's a nice change of pace back. Arguably, San Francisco's second best back this offseason has been their other undrafted free agent, Cody Schrader. The rookie out of Missouri looks like an absolute beast out there. He's perfect for San Francisco's zone scheme because he doesn't necessarily need to run his 40-yard dash in 4.3, but he does do a great job of choosing the right holes and then exploding through them. The one thing about San Francisco's undrafted free agent running backs, they always appear to be good, and I think that's because Bobby Turner is picking them. He's worked with some Hall of Fame running backs, so he knows exactly what it takes and it doesn't take to be a successful running back. So while some teams looked at Schrader and saw a running back coming in at 5'8", weighing 200 pounds and running his 40-yard dash in a pretty slow 4.61 seconds, Bobby Turner didn't see that. Rather, he saw Schrader as the player who led the entire SEC in rushing with his ability to pick the right hole and then explode through it. And then once he was out in the passing game, despite having a shorter frame, he does a good job of catching almost everything coming his direction, even if it's off a little bit. And when compared to a guy like Elijah Mitchell, so far in his career, he doesn't have the same durability issues as he played in a total of 55 college games. My whole point in bringing up Schrader, if you don't know who he is already, you're about to with preseason coming up. But moving off San Francisco's running backs and into their offensive line, while it's hard to break down their offensive line too in depth today because they weren't wearing pads, their offensive line continues to give up pressures. Today, for instance, they were especially susceptible on their tackle spots, with Colton McKivitz and Jalen Moore probably giving up one. On the positive note for San Francisco, it does appear Dominic Puni will be able to step in this year and be an effective right guard for San Francisco. And with a couple of years of development, I think San Francisco has a really solid offensive lineman on their hands. Moving off San Francisco's offensive line and into their quarterbacks, Brock Purdy had an extremely efficient day today, going 12 of 15, and he had 2 drop passes. And he was able to do all of this without his starting left tackle Trent Williams, without Christian McCaffrey in the backfield, or Deebo Samuel or Brandon Ayuk lining up wide. Outside Purdy, both Dobbs and Allen weren't the most accurate quarterbacks today, but Allen was much worse. He nearly threw an interception to Taylor Hawkins, who just dropped it. On a quick pass to Eric Sauber, he was telegraphing his throw the entire way, which led D. Winters to jump the route and nearly have another interception. Out of these 2 quarterbacks in competition for this number 2 job, I would have to say Joshua Dobbs is the better one. While Dobbs is inconsistent at times, he also offers much more upside in his ability to get it done with his legs, and he might even have a stronger arm. Moving off San Francisco's offense and into their defensive side of the ball, San Francisco safeties quietly had themselves a pretty nice day. San Francisco starter Jair Brown was able to break up a pass, and then Taylor Hawkins nearly had an interception on Brandon Allen's pass. Moving into San Francisco's corners, I think the best players on the day were Isaac Yiadom and Samuel Womack. Womack specifically on the day did a good job in press man coverage where he was able to shut down Tariq Owens, and he also was able to break up a pass on the day. While it's going to be hard for Womack to make this team because of the depth at the position, he did put in a nice effort today. Meanwhile, Isaac Yiadom continues to look like one of San Francisco's better investments during this offseason. Yiadom's best play of the day came when Brock Purdy was targeting Trent Taylor on the slant in the end zone. But throughout this entire route, Yiadom was all over Taylor, and then finally when Purdy threw it, he was able to break up the pass. Moving off San Francisco's corners and into their linebackers, the player who really stood out today had to be D. Winters. Today, as I was mentioning, he nearly had an interception on Brandon Allen when he was trying to target Eric Sauber on that quick pass. But this entire time, Winters was reading the play and jumped on the route. And while Winters wasn't able to bring down this interception, I do think he's done a great job of closing on the ball throughout this entire offseason and is definitely making a push for San Francisco's linebacker job. Whether that be linebacker 2 or linebacker 3, we'll see. But he's definitely up there. Moving into San Francisco's defensive line, while it's hard to tell exactly who got sacks, I would say Nick Bosa probably had a few today, as well as Leonard Floyd. San Francisco's backups in Alex Barrett and Austin Bryant also recorded sacks on the day. Ultimately though, these are just some players that stood out to me today for San Francisco's training camp, and I want to hear who you're excited to see headed into this preseason. It would also mean a ton to me if you could like and subscribe, and as always, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.